So I've been a gimbal user for some years now, and for me they just had to be lightweight, stable and not get in the way, so I stuck with the first Zion crane. But these days I got to work with the Ronin RS2, and I'm gonna show you in this video why you should consider upgrading to something like this. We're gonna see how practical it is, how good is the stabilization, some of the coolest features and much more. E aí, I'm Henry, Brazilian photographer and filmmaker living in Italy, and in this channel I help you with the tech tools to be creative. Today's tool is a gimbal. It's the DJI Ronin RS2. After so many years using the Zion crane, I understood perfectly when it can be used, and actually there are still some situations in which I prefer to carry it instead of this one, but especially in situations in which you need to carry a little bit heavier load and you need the extra stabilization, this is just the perfect tool for the job. Now, one of the things that really impressed me about this gimbal is the structure and how strong it feels in your hand and how strong it feels that it can actually carry a lot of weight. In the specs, it's declared that it can handle 4.5 kilos. And this means that it's the maximum in which you can still guarantee a very good stabilization without micro jitters or anything like that. Considering a mirrorless camera with one lens, you're gonna be about 2 kilos, depending on the lens of course, you have a lot of room to spare. The handles up here are carbon fiber, which make it as light as possible and also very, very durable. Now the structure is similar to many other gimbals, but there are some key differences in this. So first of all, the battery is actually the handle over here, and you can actually detach it to recharge it separately from the rest of the gimbal. In 1.5 hours, you can actually charge it from 0 to full, and it lasts more than 10 hours. It's really nice to see how these handles feel much more solid to lock everything in position, and also you have a lock on each axis to make it easier to balance the gimbal and also to be sure that it's not going to be moving around when you're carrying it from one side to the other. Another thing that is really good about this gimbal is this dual plate system over here. And if you used the gimbal before, you know how much is a pain whenever you have to get the camera out of it. Just use it handheld for a while. With this dual plate system, you actually have one that sits on top of the gimbal and you don't need to take it off, while another one stays on the camera and you can just slide it in and out whenever you want. This is such a lifesaver. Also, this fine control over here for the front and back position of the camera is amazing, so you can really fine tune it to the perfect spot until it's balanced. And down here you're gonna find the most important parts regarding features of this gimbal. Because back here you got this small LCD screen where you can access all the configuration of the gimbal. Either the way it's gonna be moving around, if it's gonna follow you in all 3 axes or which ones do you want it to move, or if you wanna configure some of the features it has like time-lapse or moving on its own, just like you saw in the intro of this video. And this is really handy because in some other gimbals you actually have to use your smartphone to control of these features. And also here in the front you get a button that can actually control where the camera is, and also a small wheel down here that you can access with your index finger to change the zoom or the focus on the lens. Now I know one of the first things that comes to mind when people think about getting a gimbal is how complicated it is to operate. And actually this one is not very complicated at all because it's got these handles that are very practical and also the locks on each different axis. The idea here is if you do it in the correct order, you can just lock everything and go one axis at a time to set everything right. You're gonna begin up here setting the camera to the front and to the back until it's well balanced, and then up and down on that axis. Once it's done, you can lock it and just proceed down and go doing like this until you've calibrated all the 3 axes. The idea is the camera has to stand still in whichever position you set it, even with the gimbal off. I'm not gonna go through the whole process on how to set it up right now, but you can check DJI's video over here that explains in detail how to do it for each axis. Now, how heavy and tiring is it to use? Well, the weight is gonna depend on how many things you mount around this. You can actually use just this handle and the gimbal itself and you're good to go. But you can also assemble this small tripod underneath here. There's also the connection for the cell phone if you want to have it also. You can also actually have the Raven eye connected below here, the plate. So in general, it's gonna range between 1 kilo to 100 up to 1 kilo and 8 more or less. But actually the center of gravity of this gimbal is really good and close to the hands, so you don't really need to make that much of an effort like with other gimbals. But of course it gets tiring throughout the day. I've used it during a whole day of shooting from morning till evening, and I definitely had to put it down to rest sometimes, so it's really good to have the tripod on. Now, at least for me, the most important question was how good is the stabilization? And it didn't disappoint me at all, especially because I think it's designed for much heavier setups than the one that I had, so it looked like it was a total breeze for the gimbal to just do all the movements that I wanted, and it was really, really smooth. I'm gonna show you on the screen right now some of the images that we did in Milan. And there was a little bit of everything, all kinds of terrains going up and down stairs. coming in and out of transportation inside cars, inside the metro. And I was really impressed with how smooth the images are, and also with the lack of those really boring jitters in the image that you get, especially if you're a little bit overweight on the gimbal system with a bit heavier setup than it can actually handle. Now I have many different options for the following modes. It could be only panning, it could be pan and tilt, could be in FPV mode in which it just turns everywhere. It can be even in portrait mode, or you can enter a custom mode in which you can lock the individual axis as you please. Now regarding the extra features, it actually got some very interesting options over here. Mainly they are automated ways of making the gimbal move around, either because you want to repeat a certain movement precisely, or you want to execute a movement that is really difficult to execute just doing it handheld. The tracking is the one that you saw in the intro of this video, in which you just set waypoints, meaning the exact position that you want the camera to be and for how long, how many you want, and the camera will just follow this path until the final waypoint that you create. So this gimbal comes in mainly two different forms. One is the basic packaging that is mostly just the gimbal itself, and other is the Pro Combo version that comes with the focusing system, meaning the focus motor and the rail to put around the lens, and also the Raven Eye image transmitter, which you can see actually connected down here right now, that connects to the gimbal and to the camera, so that you can connect it wirelessly with your phone and not only see what the camera is seeing, but also control everything from far away. And this can be really handy, especially if you have two people, one person operating the gimbal, for example, and the other one just worrying about having the perfect framing. It also unleashes some extra functions, like for example, tracking something on the screen. Now regarding the price, this is not a cheap gimbal at all, but if you think that it can handle whatever camera and lens that you throw at it, it might be just enough for any kind of job. So you might get just one of these and you're good to go for any kind of situation. Normally the price difference between the normal packaging and the Pro Combo is about $150, which I think is totally worth it to simply get the Pro Combo version and have not only the focusing but also the Raven Eye, which are really cool add-ons to the basic model. Alright, so who do I think this gimbal is for and in which situations should you use it? Now this is totally a workhorse, so if you're looking for a gimbal that is not gonna give you any headache and you can be sure that it's gonna take any kind of lens, any kind of camera you throw at it, that has all these kind of features for you to be as creative as possible, it's easy to assemble, to balance, and it's probably gonna last a lifetime. Well, this is probably what you've been looking for. Okay, and who I do not recommend this for, especially for people that do not want to carry the heavy weight of having so many small extra functions, like for example the Raven Eye, all the cables, all the gear system. And also if you don't feel like carrying this much weight, you're probably gonna be better off with its smaller brother, which is the RS2. That is not actually much smaller, but it's a little bit lighter and easier to carry. Or if you want something in the extreme of the conveniency, then you can go maybe for something like the Zion Crane M3, which is a very small but still quite powerful gimbal. And also much cheaper, but of course it cannot take a heavy load like these guys here can. So in the end it depends more exactly on what you want to do. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. If you have any doubts about the Zion or the Ronins or any kind of gimbals, just write them in the comment section below. And if you don't follow me on Instagram or Twitter, do so. Like this, you can see the backstage of the production of these videos and some of the extra tips that I post there daily. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao! Hey, thanks for sticking around, and if you want to watch something else that can be interesting for you, you can check out YouTube's recommendation over here. I can't know what it is, but it's probably interesting because it's based on what YouTube knows about you and all this kind of stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!